You do not want to hear me pitch AI. It won't go well. Instead, what I'm going to talk about is the underlying data sets necessary to actually drive and power your AI. So first off, good afternoon. Thanks for coming today. It's great to see so many faces in the crowd. My name is Tim Kessler. I'm our Director of Solutions Architecture with Redox. And Redox is a healthcare data platform. We exist to provide a single access point for all of the healthcare data you could ever need to work with. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about FHIR data, as we saw presented earlier with Healthcare API and Healthcare Data Engine, or more legacy formats, things like HL7v2, XML-based CCDs. And if we keep going down this list, we're going to get to a lot of data formats that hopefully you guys never have to come across because, quite frankly, they're gross. But at Redox, we exist to provide that single API layer that's going to give you access, monitoring, connectivity. We handle all of the kind of gross data formats, translate that into a consistent format that you can work with. And I love this slide because we're really good at it. Today, we're processing over 1 billion transactions per month. And when I say transactions, what I mean here is that's a patient being admitted. That's an order being placed. That's a result being documented. That is clinical data being entered into a system for a specific patient. And we're processing over 1 billion of these every month. We have, actually, this is a little outdated. We're over 7,000 healthcare organizations live with Redox today. We power over 400 digital health applications. So Riju presented the slide earlier that shows all of these different products that are really trying to close the gap between life sciences, pharma companies, and the actual patient at the end who's on the benefit of receiving all of this support and services. We power over 400 of these applications. We integrate with over 95 different EHR systems. So that's going to be 10 that you've definitely heard of: Epic, Cerner, Athena Health, Allscripts, MedTech, McKesson, and another 84 that hopefully you don't come across too often. They get pretty dirty. And this leads to over 21,000 production interfaces. So we see a lot of data coming through our system in a lot of different formats. And again, our focus is how can we put that into a consistent format that's going to be usable so that when we get the data to its endpoint, to our customer's environment, it's ready to go. There's not a lot more cleaning that needs to be done. There's not a lot more management or maintenance. We want to get data in a usable format to our customers. And I do want to call out that the last 2 lines here. So we're over 7,000 healthcare organizations today. A typical implementation timeline for us to kick off a project and get live production data is only about 4 to 6 weeks. So you see a lot of groups talking about activating real-time healthcare data, and they start talking about 9, 12, 18-month timelines. And by that point, I mean, Google would have released 12 new AI models in that implementation period. So with Redox, you're looking at about a 4 to 6 week implementation timeline to get this data live and flowing. And my favorite link at the bottom, explore.redoxengine.com. We list all 7,000 of those healthcare organizations, all 95 plus EHRs. It's all public. You can see what our footprint actually looks like and interact with it. So with Google, I mentioned I'm not an AI expert. I'm really glad that we had all that AI expertise in advance of me coming up, because what Redox does is we're looking to power that data into the GCP ecosystem, into the Google products, so that experts that actually understand AI, that have built incredible tooling within the Vertex AI ecosystem, can help you make use of that data. At the end of the day, if you want to actually have a successful AI strategy, first and foremost, you need to have a successful data strategy. You need to have consistent data sets that you can work with, that you can build on top of, so that you can have end users in this ecosystem spending more time working with that data rather than cleaning that data. I have a couple examples of groups that we integrate with today. So I have to list Epic. I used to work there. That's how I got in this ecosystem, how I spent so much time working with healthcare data. We, of course, integrate with them. And not just pulling data from these ecosystems like Epic, Meditech, the care quality ecosystem, Dexcom, who's one of our customers that we power integrations for, but we also write data back into this ecosystem. So when we talk about making healthcare data useful, when we talk about closing the gap between the product services and the research that's being done to advance healthcare, we can't forget about the patient and the provider. And at the end of the day, Redox is not just pulling data out of these ecosystems, sharing that with our partners, but also writing data back into the EHR, putting it into the workflow at the provider's fingertips, so they're not jumping between 3, 4, 5 different screens, trying to interact with a bunch of tools. They have everything they need in their typical workflow right where they would expect it to be. Now, I mentioned that we work with over 400 different applications. We have over 7,000 healthcare organizations that we partner or that we integrate with today. I wanted to list a couple of the logos that we're driving integrations for. So first and foremost, you'll see this is across the entire continuum of care. So not just provider level integrations, we work with very large payers, helping them get closer to the patient, helping them close the time to actually act on a prior authorization. We work with a lot of life sciences companies, groups that are actually trying to bring digital therapeutics into the ecosystem and make that data useful. Again, push that data back into the provider's fingertips so that when they're making treatment decisions for their patients, they can have much more informed decisions from data that's collected at home. For example, when you look at Dexcom, when you look at Abbott, when you look at Semaphore, these are tools, these are systems that are collecting data outside the traditional healthcare ecosystem and making that data valuable and useful to the providers that are helping treat those patients. Now, again, looking at the entire continuum of care, I've tried to gray out the provider, the payer use cases. We can highlight those in another presentation. What I really want to talk about, and we'll cover in a couple of slides looking at some specific use cases, is really where Redox interacts within that life science ecosystem. So you're going to hear me talk at great length about clinical data registry support, as well as digital therapeutic integrations. These are things that we do day in and day out and really help power data collection and aggregation, as well as write back and usability of that data for our partners. But at the end of the day, when you think about where this information is being generated, it's a patient in front of a provider entering into their EHR or some other source system. And that data, again, needs to be pulled out, and needs to be made consistent, and that's what Redox is looking to power. Taking that real-world data and putting it in the hands and the tools of systems like what Google is building to make this data useful. So Riju presented a couple different tools, things like Vertex AI, called out Healthcare Data Engine, Healthcare API. Redox integrates seamlessly with all of these tools. We can write FHIR data directly to Healthcare API. We can stream this data in real time into the Healthcare Data Engine, so you can build that longitudinal patient record and understand the patients that you're working with. Not just have a snapshot in time from a single CCD or a PDF that's pulled one time, but aggregate that data as it's generated in real time to be able to make decisions more at an operational level. Talking about, when I say real time, what I mean here is seconds. Patients discharged from a healthcare organization, within 50 milliseconds, that message is going to hit Redox. We're going to translate that into a FHIR format. We can enrich that with some of our other partners if there's additional context that you need from there. And then we can translate that into the FHIR format, get that into your Google Cloud environment, all within the span of under a second. So that when you're actually looking to drive things like discharge planning workflows or ensuring that a patient's care plan is being adhered to, they're being treated immediately post-discharge and reducing that risk of readmission, that's all going to require that real-time access to this data that Redox can enable. So I mentioned I was going to call out a couple of use cases in scenarios where we're actually seeing this being done. One of our large pharma services customers that we work with very closely, can't say names, but one of our large pharma services companies that we power clinical registry integrations for uses us to pull data from many different healthcare organizations that they work with in a FHIR format, get that into a consistent ecosystem so that they can actually power this longitudinal view of these individual patients that they're tracking across all of these different healthcare organizations for that specific registry use case. Now, I love using this example because we actually replaced one of our competitors in this scenario where the integrations were taking about 7 days from initial query until that data was actually returned to them in that format. Redox does this in about 2 hours. So there's a lot of patients we're running through, querying against many different healthcare organizations, but the actual speed to value in activating this data, getting it into your ecosystem and making it usable, that is what we want to do. That's what we focus on. And getting this data into the hands of your end users in a way that they can make use of it quickly and efficiently is where we excel. And I had to include the Epic logo here, had to talk about some use cases we're driving within the Epic ecosystem specifically. And this is one of my favorite examples because when we talk about digital therapeutics, when we talk about actually implementing products and seeing the value of that solution with your patients, there's a lot out there. There's hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications that you can actually deploy. And it's really difficult for a healthcare organization to make decisions around what they want to implement, what they want to try out, and what's going to be successful. Now, when you look at implementation timelines that range from 9 to 12 to 18 months, you can't rapidly make decisions around that. You can't run a quick proof of concept, test something out. I mean, if you turn to your IT team and say you're going to run a proof of concept that's going to take 18 months to get live, that project's never getting started. But with Redox, we work really closely with one of our customers, Memorial Care. And we power them to rapidly proof of concept these digital therapeutic applications, roll these out in a matter of weeks with very, very little IT team engagement. So it's actually feasible for them to say, hey, we want to test this out with one of our small patient populations. The implementation is going to be a couple weeks. We're going to get this data live. We're going to run a 3-month pilot where we're pulling all this data into our ecosystem. We're then going to reach out to these patients, see how successful this has been, whether or not this is something that's valuable to our providers getting this data into their ecosystem, and what we can do to actually make this more valuable. So our ability, with Redox in at Memorial Care, we can actually activate these implementations and these applications in a time frame that's reasonable for them to test, POC, see what's working, and then move on and try new things. Now, when you look at the broader Google ecosystem, there's so many different products that can be enabled, so many different applications that can be powered. All of them need data. So when you're trying to wonder, where do we start engaging with Redox? Where do we start? Exactly what we did with Memorial Care, we can do with anybody who's looking to leverage some of these new products, these new functionalities, these new AI models within the GCP ecosystem. You want to rapidly innovate with a new Gemini AI model, and you want to get data into your ecosystem that can actually make this valuable and useful to your end users. That's a scenario where Redox can tap into these systems, get that data flowing in a matter of weeks, not months, not years, so that you can actually turn around results within the quarter rather than within the next couple of years. The most important piece, Redox can, of course, be bought on the Google Marketplace. We've been partnering with Google for quite a while now in an effort to actually not just activate groups that want to get their data onto GCP, but also activate other partners within this ecosystem. So when I come to an event like this and see groups like Mindshift, see groups like Reltia, who we've had a lot of conversations with in order to get data into these ecosystems and help more rapidly power these tools, you start to see the value of the whole GCP partner ecosystem coming together. It's been a delight working with Google and all the partner folks within the organization, and actually seeing things like this get live, that we can actually start deploying these services very, very quickly is exactly what we're focused on. So thank you.